The story of The Mute Father truly touches the reader's heart. The image of a hearing-impaired father overcoming communication barriers to raise his child is deeply moving. His actions and gestures not only express love, but also convey valuable lessons about patience and understanding. The message that love can be communicated without words is profoundly meaningful, reminding us that sincere emotions always carry great power. The Mute Father, Part 1, A Silent Beginning. My father found me abandoned by the roadside when I was just a few months old. The most remarkable thing wasn't that I was left there, but that the man who picked me up couldn't speak. He was an orphan himself, growing up without family or anyone to care for him. He survived by selling lottery tickets on the streets, earning just enough to get by. In his spare time, he attended classes for the hearing impaired, learning to read and write. When he needed to communicate with others, he'd write things down. He named me Tien Tam, kind heart, a name that was both a wish and a reminder for me to live kindly and stay compassionate. He raised me single-handedly, Part 2, the day I thought I was dying. When I was 15, I woke up one morning to find breakfast already prepared by my father, like always. He left to sell lottery tickets while I got dressed and headed to school, unaware of the storm that would come later. At noon, my father returned home, started folding blankets and tidying up the bed I had rushed out of earlier. That's when he saw a red stain on the mattress. His eyes widened. He panicked, pacing back and forth, waiting for me. As soon as I got home, I ran to the bed and burst into tears. My father, startled, frantically signed to ask what had happened. Between sobs, I gestured to him. "It's bleeding down there." My friends laughed at me. "I'm scared." "Am I dying, Dad?" He looked at me, then at the stain, and his face turned pale with alarm. He quickly grabbed a clean pair of pants and pushed me toward the bathroom. He then dashed inside, grabbed our ceramic piggy bank, and smashed it without hesitation. Coins and bills of all sizes poured out amid shards of clay. He scooped them up and neatly stacked them into his pocket. He carried me on his old bicycle. I sat behind him, sobbing uncontrollably, while he pedaled with every ounce of strength he had. We reached the hospital and he rushed to the emergency room, pulling the hand of a female doctor, pointing frantically at the bloodstains on my pants. I, through tears, interpreted his worry for the doctor. The doctor smiled kindly and led me to the restroom, where she explained how to use a sanitary pad. She gently told me this was a normal part of growing up for girls, called menstruation, and that it would happen monthly. "It's nothing to be scared of," she said. I breathed a sigh of relief. After explaining it all to my father, he smiled shyly, scratching his head in embarrassment for not knowing about this. Then, remembering something, he led me to the bike again. We stopped by the nearby store, where he went in and bought me a few packs of sanitary pads and a new piggy bank. On the ride home, for the first time, I felt deeply lucky and incredibly grateful for the silent man who raised me. Part 3. Illness and falling down. Life with my father was never easy, but the hardest moments were also when I felt his love most clearly. I was 8 when I first saw him collapse at our doorstep. His face was pale, lips blue, hands trembling. I panicked and ran to get help. Neighbors carried him to the clinic, while I held his cold hand, terrified he wouldn't wake up. He had a high fever and was completely exhausted from overworking and not eating properly. I stayed by his side the entire night. When he woke up, he tapped me lightly on the forehead 3 times, a silent, "Don't worry, I'm okay." But I was scared to lose the only person who loved me unconditionally. There were times when I was the one who fell, scraped knees, fevers, or nightmares. My father was always the first to notice. He couldn't speak words of comfort, but he stayed with me all night, wiping my sweat and holding my hand tightly. We couldn't have full conversations, but we understood each other better than most people ever could, through looks, gestures, and the bond that needed no words. Part 4. Selling lottery tickets, simple meals, and overflowing love. On weekends or holidays, I'd beg him to let me come along while he sold lottery tickets. He always hesitated, but eventually gave in to my pleading eyes. I loved sitting behind him on the bike, hugging his waist, smelling the scent of sun and sweat on his worn shirt. He had regular customers, people who liked him for his gentleness. Some didn't even buy tickets. They'd just give him money and say, "Buy her a box of milk, okay?" He never responded, just bowed his head in thanks and pedaled away, his eyes always carrying a warm, distant light. Our meals were simple, sometimes just rice with sesame salt, but he always gave me the bigger portion. Later, I'd see him nibbling on vegetables and realize he had given up part of his share for me. He handled his chopsticks like a painter with a brush, careful and reverent. I never once heard him say, "I love you," but I knew, if love had no limits, it was the love he gave me. Part 5. When a girl grows up and a father is lost for words. As I reached my teenage years, I began to crave understanding. I felt frustrated that my father didn't understand things like other dads. One day, out of annoyance, I told him, "I wish you were a normal dad." He froze, silent as always, but this time, he handed me a small note. "I'm sorry I can't speak, but I always hear you." That night I cried myself to sleep, yet the next morning, he still cooked breakfast and took me to school, waiting at the gate just to make sure I was safe. When I passed my university entrance exams, he cried. It was the first time I'd seen tears roll down his cheeks. He hugged me tightly and handed me a notebook, filled with years of his handwritten messages, clumsy, uneven, but beautiful. "I love you. You make me proud." Part 6. Growing up and letting go. I moved to the city for college. My father continued selling tickets, sending me money in crumpled envelopes with little letters inside. I took part-time jobs, tried to live independently, but every time I read his notes, I cried. After graduation, he came to my ceremony in an old shirt, hair now fully gray. He didn't say anything, just hugged me tightly and tapped my shoulder 3 times. I understood. "I love you." I brought him to live with me in the city. By then, he was frail. His hands shook. His steps were slow. Yet every morning, he would sweep the yard, water the plants, or sit on the porch waiting for me. Once I came home late and found him asleep on a chair, holding a note in his hand. I waited for you. Part 7. A love without words. One morning, I called him but got no answer. He lay peacefully in bed, like he was just napping. In his hand was the old notebook of words he had written for me, and tucked inside was his final letter. "My dear Tien Tum, I'm sorry I couldn't say I love you out loud, but every time you smiled, my heart overflowed. If there is a next life, I want to be your father again. Mute, poor, or struggling, it doesn't matter, as long as I get to watch you grow up happy." Epilogue. I closed the notebook. My tears fell onto its worn cover. Some things in life don't need to be spoken to be deeply understood. And my father, the mute man who raised me, taught me the greatest lesson of all, that love doesn't need words.